More than 1 out of every 20 open jobs in the United States is a cybersecurity job. However, for every 2 cybersecurity jobs that is filled, 1 sits empty. While 44% of men in cybersecurity hold a postgraduate degree, the number of women is 52%.
The first place that we can start is gender diversity. If young girls can see female role models in the area of cybersecurity, they may say, I want to be like that. Oh, wow, I didn't know you could do it. Can I follow in her footsteps?
Gender diversity is the equitable or fair representation of people of different genders. It most commonly refers to an equitable ratio of men and women, but may also include people of non-binary genders. We are slowly moving in the right direction, as 58% of female cybersecurity leaders have held their position for less than 5 years. Subsequently, 89% of women working in cybersecurity said they feel secure in their jobs.
Don't settle for crumbs when you deserve the whole feast, whether that is in your career or relationships. As women, we tend to undermine our skill sets and the value we bring to the table. Trust your gut and go for it.
Good evening. Jason and I would like to take a couple of minutes here before we kick off this second in a 2-part episode on women in cybersecurity to recognize the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. In this world that we live in today in cybersecurity, we need all the help we can get to stop the bad guys and minimize these breaches that we continuously hear about in the news each and every day.
We have a 3 million person shortage in the field, and that's just today. The problem is getting worse every year. We need to fill these shortages with cybersecurity experts from all walks of life, including race, gender, and sexual orientation. We all need to get behind this movement, as it's only going to get better, and it's only going to help better our industry and help reinforce a strong industry of cybersecurity experts to make a difference in the world.
If you're new to the channel, or if this is your first episode to hear and you enjoy it, please like and subscribe on YouTube. We appreciate all the support that we can get, and we appreciate feedback, good and bad. It helps us to get better at what we do. So please leave those comments.
Yes, please contribute to helping us do a better job of bringing content to all of you. And with that, we invite you to enjoy the second part of Women in Cybersecurity. Episode 14, Women in Cybersecurity, Part 2. Welcome back. So I find it interesting that when you look at statistics on what men and women consider their top concerns, they're relatively close. In fact, the stats are almost dead even on many of the items. For example, when it comes to the item or the topic of having commitment or the lack of from upper management, the variance was less than 2% between the male and females. The same was true with work-life balance. And so when you look at work-life balance, there was still really only a 2% difference between what male and females believed was a challenge in being satisfied with their job or their role within cybersecurity. So other top concerns that we looked at that were shared between both men and women included things like reputation of their organization, the risk of seeing their job outsourced, or the threat of artificial intelligence reducing the need for cybersecurity workers, the lack of standards in cybersecurity. Those are all areas that were reviewed. But for the most part, men and women experience that the same, and their concerns were the same around being satisfied with their role that they play. My guess would be, and I'd like to hear from the two of you more about this, but my guess would be that when you look at all things being equal in a job role, the things that maybe bring more unsatisfaction or less satisfaction in that role from a difference between men and women have nothing to do with the job role itself, but have everything to do with the acceptance of you in that role. So what are your thoughts there? Is that accurate?
That's deep. I think that it can be accurate, but there's also places where it's not accurate, right? I've been in certain situations in my past career where it is accurate, right? And you struggle with that because maybe you feel the extra pressure, or you feel that, this sort of concept of imposter syndrome, and it's amplified in a certain place. But then there's other circumstances where it's not accurate, and that's the circumstance I am today. And I think we were talking a little bit about this before the show. I think a lot of it boils down to a choice, right? And so you choose your organizations, and you choose the people that you work with around you, and the culture of the company when you go to an organization and you make that decision, because you look and you weigh things like that, and you say to yourself, as a female, am I going to be accepted? And if I'm not going to be, then this is not the place for me. And I think you have to give kudos to the organizations that embrace it. And Illusive is absolutely one of those organizations. Our CEO is super committed to the success of the employees from a diversity perspective. And it's one of the reasons why I joined this company, is because I felt it, and I continue to feel it in the time that I've been here, and that he genuinely wants me and those around us to be extremely successful. And so I think that it's about the organization and the people that are around you that really determine whether your statement is accurate or not. And you have to be able to be in a position to ask the right questions and to ensure that what you're getting yourself into allows for you to be accepted in that role.
Yeah.
You got to find that culture. Yeah.
And I think too, like, just looking at the graph that Jason touched on. So one, it makes me very happy to hear that men were also concerned about not understanding the terminology of cybersecurity, because we have a great example. Actually, today, I was having a separate conversation with Kevin, and not only did I not understand what he was asking, I also could not regurgitate it properly back to our VP of Solutions Engineering. But I was, you know what I did though? I said, that is such a great question. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to find the answer. And by bringing on none less than our VP of Solutions Engineering, luckily Kevin already had a call with Near to begin with after, our conversation. So I think a lot of things of one, like, this is maybe just me giving some advice. It's a little unsolicited to the listeners, but the best piece of advice that I received from a CISO, actually it was director of cybersecurity. He said, Madison, I do not want you to always have the answers. He said, as a CISO and as director of cybersecurity, we like to flex our egos and our education. So sometimes we don't want you to know everything, and it's okay if you don't know everything. And it doesn't mean that we value you less or your organization less, because when I don't know the answer, when I get asked something, like my conversation with Kevin today, that's when that little voice comes in of like, I just screwed up. The deal's done. I'm not like, oh my gosh, like my company's going to fire me because I don't even know how to answer this. Well, newsflash, in cybersecurity, there's a new acronym every single hour. I swear, every single hour, someone is inventing a new acronym, and I'm like, where did that one come from? Who made that one up today?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's no shortage of acronyms in cybersecurity.
And the thing that you're expressing is very, very, very important across the board. and it is a style that I like to make sure all of my employees adhere to. Is that, look, I might be the senior whatever in a role in technology, whatever that role might be, right? And you all are going to look to me to have all the answers, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to have all the answers. And I'm expecting us collectively to come up with the answers. I will have answers, right? I just the fact that I have the experience will allow me to be able to tap into some things that you may or may not know. But I'm not going to have the answers to everything, nor am I going to act like I have the answers to everything. And I'm expecting us to work collectively to solve the problem.
That's what makes you good at what you do, though. You have to be able to admit that. You have to know you'll never have all of the answers when it comes to the
that's
world
reality.
of cybersecurity. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's literally impossible. But that's why it takes a village. And if you find the company that embraces the fact that that culture is extremely important, then you've probably found a home for a long time.
Yeah,
That's
definitely
important.
I love this topic because
Yeah.
I just think that there's so much to be said for being vulnerable sometimes. And I think, back to unsolicited advice here to females who are starting their career and working through the beginning in the early stages, don't ever be afraid to ask for help. I learned that the really hard way. And there's things you want to learn the hard way, and there's things that you're just like, I wish I didn't, and that was one of them. As I think as a female, I felt I had to work so hard because there were so many men around me, and I felt that I wasn't good enough. And in doing that, I never wanted to show a weakness. And so I would push through and I would push through, and mentally, it wasn't sustainable. And in addition, it really hurt me because I fell really, really hard just because I didn't ask for help. And so and it's something I have to tell myself every day is, hey, if you don't know the answer, it's okay. Give yourself a little bit of grace and just raise your hand. And I think that that's just something so important to consider, that no one is going to think ill of you if you ask your help. In fact, people are going to think you're weaker if you don't.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
And I would add one thing up to that, right? This is kind of the backstory of how I pursue that same equation, is that and I think this is true across everyone, in the fact that not knowing the answer doesn't mean that you're anything less than what your true potential is. And in fact, your true potential isn't in knowing the answer. Your true potential is in having the ability to go figure out what the answer is. And so you may not know it at that moment, but knowing that you can go figure it out and you can have the right answer makes all the difference in the world. So it's better to say, you know what, I don't really know that right now, but I'll go figure that out for you, and I can get that for you. And then be able to allow yourself to connect to the right people, to fill in the gaps, to get the right answers and come back. That's the true science to being able to solve those problems.
And that shows maturity too on your part, on anybody's part, because it shows your ability to set your ego aside and say, you know what, I'm okay. I'm okay with not knowing. I don't, it's not a big deal. Having the technical expertise to go find that answer, to come back with the right answer, and to implement that answer, whether it be some sort of technology or whatever it happens to be, is where your true worth lies.
So to your point, Madison, think about this, right? To your point, you're like, well, it's an acronym that's being made up all the time. You know how many times that I sit in some place and someone's making up an acronym? I'm like, what are they talking about again? And I go back and I look at them and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I don't let it stop me just because I don't know what the acronym is. I assume that it's something you got on the inside and I don't need to know, but I'll figure it out at some later date and I'll still be productive with it.
We're in that meeting going, okay, what the heck is that?
Yeah. Is it so well? And to that point, right? Google's going to be your best friend. But actually, at this conference, I had the chance to talk to a director at JP Morgan, and she said, just ask them, hey, what is the context around that acronym?
Yeah.
She's like, what are they going to say? They're not going to answer you.
Yeah.
If they're asking you a question and you're asking them a question back, like, what's going to happen there? They're going to have to answer. So yeah. I think it's a balance of, being vulnerability. I mean, sometimes some people may think I'm too vulnerable. I think that's part of my brand of me just being able to like let down my guard because, you said earlier, I think, Kevin, you're talking about egos and, salespeople, those two don't exist, right? Not. They're like in every salesperson. And so you pair the fact of being in sales of, oh my God, quota. What if I don't get it? Oh, I have to flex hard because I need to know the answers. Then you pair this unconscious, gender bias on top of it. It's like a double whammy that is like, it can be very anxiety ridden. I can be honest with you. It's very crippling and anxiety ridden, but deep breath in, deep breath out. And then I think having leaders like Kristen and us being the face of what leadership should look like in IT, right? Having a balance of men and female. I actually had the pleasure of talking a couple times with Naomi Buckwalter. I heard her on a podcast and reached out to her, sent her a LinkedIn video and said, can you mentor me? And I said, why do you think there is such a lack of females in here? And she says, honestly, still wondering why. And she goes in, she has a great why of why she's in cybersecurity, really, really, really passionate about it. But she said, women bring emotional intelligence that this industry needs more of. And the more I thought about it, I was like, because we're deemed as being too emotional, right? And so it's like kind of flipping it and being like, oh no, like we can actually use our strengths in this industry where they're typically not, enhanced or even like touched on.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. And you said a couple of really cool things in there around, why don't you ask them what it means, right? Because what are they going to do? Not answer you? Well, I'm going to tell you that many of them don't know what the acronym is either because they've been using the acronym for so long. They're like, okay, what does that mean again? And you're really putting them on the spot to have to answer something that they don't really know, right? They might know the context to use it in. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, I was in a meeting once at Microsoft corporate headquarters with top engineers at Microsoft. We were working on some problems and we were in this room and we're all kind of sharing some ideas. And we had this one engineer stood up and started going deep into this technology that he was testing out and how he was doing it and all of these things that he was doing. And it went on for about 40 minutes and he got done and we took a break. And the guy walked out of the room and all the other engineers around the table was still sitting there. And I kid you not, we all looked at each other and was like, and no one wanted to say what they all were thinking until the first person said it. And that person says, did you know what he was talking about? And everybody else in the room was like, dude, I had no idea what he was saying. I mean, I was lost when he got going on this stuff. And
that's Microsoft.
Yeah. I mean, they're smart people. And these were top engineers at Microsoft. And they had no idea what this guy was talking about, who was another top engineer. It happens.
This goes right. It goes back to that. It goes back to that mile wide, inch deep concept of cybersecurity being so broad. You sit in so many talks at Black Hat or at DEF CON or whatever cyber conference you go to, and sometimes you feel like you're just the dumbest guy in the room, and it has a lot to do with the fact that I've stepped into the wrong room. They're talking, an area that I'm not super familiar with, right? Yeah. So you're like a deer in the headlights, sitting in there going, wow, I feel so stupid right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most
it's
of the time, you're thinking what everyone else is thinking in the room. And then once someone finally says it, everyone's like, thank God that person asked, right?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's going back to what Kristen said of like the person being like vulnerable and strong enough to raise their hand and vocal, right? So that's where all the theater majors come into place. I think cybersecurity should start going to like theater like shows and just like recruiting people because I swear you have to learn how to get rejected, right? That's theater 101. That's going to happen in this industry. You've got to memorize a script like very quickly when you're on the phones with people and you got to read the room. So that's my little shameless plug there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's jump into a whole new topic of discussion here. So, cybersecurity, as we all know, is a pretty new area for people to get into for a profession. It's not been around very long, and it's still considered today pretty cutting edge. And I think it's interesting. A lot of people that are getting into this field are entering what is still considered like the first generation of experts to be part of this movement of cybersecurity. It's not like being in other fields, like being a nurse or being an architect or being a teacher or, being a carpenter or something that's been around for years and years and years. This stuff is new, and it's merging science and technology all into the same world, which is fascinating, really. But being in this field, we're considered cutting edge talent, and that's kind of cool. That's fun for us, and we enjoy thinking that way. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. It's fun, and I just think it's cool to think of it like that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, what is it that you feel would lure someone into this field? And especially as it relates to women, I feel like a lot of people feel, and this is not just women, but men too, and especially younger people, feel almost intimidated by cybersecurity if you know nothing about it. How can we change that? Because we just mentioned, all of us said it. We've all said in those conferences where we're sitting there like deer in the headlight going, oh God, am I the dumbest person in this talk right now? How do we get past that? How do we encourage people to come join this movement? It's important that we grow cybersecurity because there's not enough good guys. There's plenty of bad guys, not enough good guys. How do we do that? How do we get there?
Look, I think when people think about what they want out of their career, right, they want to be passionate about what they do and they want to make an impact. And it's one of the things that drew me to cybersecurity. I mean, I started my career in hardware and services and software sales from at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, right? And had an amazing career there. And when I made the decision to leave and think about what my next move was, I took some time to think really long and hard about it. And I wanted to get into something that I felt that I could really get behind, that I was really passionate about, but most importantly, like I said, that I felt like I could really make an impact. And that's what really lured me to this, because aside from, yes, it's technology in general, I'm super biased. Like, get into it. You're going to make a shit ton of money. It's going to be fantastic.
It's awesome.
So if you've got goals for yourself from a financial perspective, like, go get yourself in it, right? But in looking at cyber, it also gives you an opportunity, to your point, of stopping bad people from doing bad things and making an impact. And it's very relatable. I mean, right? I mean, if you think about what we do, I mean, every single day I log in and, my identity is all over the place, right? It's on every website possible, somewhere, somehow. And when attackers are in, what are they trying to do? They're trying to gain access to my identities, to your identities. And so you can talk about it, right? And you can get behind it, and you know that you are solving a problem that is real. And I think there's something to be said for that. And especially as females, because Madison, you brought this up earlier, there's a high EQ that's tied to a female. I think that actually ties into what we're doing, because we sort of feel that emotional connection, that we're helping, we're saving, we're giving solutions to problems that need help. And so that, to me, is what continues to keep me here, what lured me here, and I think is something to really be thought about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that you touched on, I think you said personable or relatable. Everyone loves stories, right? That's Sales 101. You learn through stories. We identify through stories. So story time. Prior to joining Illusive, I was with Tanium before this. Again, had a fabulous career there. And luckily enough, when I moved to Illusive, I was still calling on the same territory. So I had covered TOLA with a lot of other territories now at Illusive. But that meant that I called on a lot of the same businesses, and I had pre-existing relationships, right? So that rapport is there, walls were down. And there is, a prospect in particular that I picked the conversation back up when I started with Illusive. We got, knee deep in a demo, and then we went out to a conference, kind of like ghosted me for a bit, which is very normal in sales, right? We all know. And I ran into him at the conference, but still was a little quiet. And sure enough, I was listening to cybersecurity headlines, and unfortunately his company was the number one thing that they opened up with, that they had a cyber breach. And for me, it's like, if you only had not ghosted me and you literally went through with everything, we could have prevented this. And that literally was a personable example that kept me continuing to wake up every morning and drive to Plano, Texas, where our office is.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think, generally, which is exciting to hear your stories around really what excites you to get going in it and why you decided to, plant your flag in cybersecurity. I think generally, it's exciting to hear that people are in an industry, men and women are excited to be in an industry where they feel like they can make a difference. And
yeah, it's huge.
And this is an industry that is at, I would say, still at the beginning of that forefront of allowing an avenue for people to step in and really make a difference. There's so much need in this area, and there's so much that's changing in this area, that the opportunities for everyone is astronomical. So at some point, it is really about what you guys have talked about, finding the organization that meets your goals, objectives, and values, that will embrace you, that will help encourage you to rise to the success that you want to reach. And if you can do that, and there are plenty of them, if you can do that, then that would be a place to plant your flag and go for it. And cybersecurity, I think, amongst all technology organizations or industries, is an industry in which you're starting to see more organizations that are meeting all of those objectives.
Yeah.
I'll add a little bit to that too. What cybersecurity is one area where you never feel alone. And I've never seen a community of professionals that have each other's back more than this field.
Yeah.
And I think I saw that most when I first started chasing my CISSP cert. I couldn't believe the amount of people that are out there trying to help other people get there, get that to that point of certification, get to that point of understanding the material the way you need to understand it. And it's amazing seeing some of the resources that are popping up all over to help us all grow. And so that's a key thing in this field that I love. And, we talked about how, exciting it is to feel like you're making a difference, fighting the good fight or whatever. Every day is a new challenge and every day is a new adventure, but there's not a day that's boring. I can tell you that. I've yet to have that day. Women and men share pretty much the same workplace values, priorities, and aspirations. Ironically, they seem to share most of the same concerns, too. Some of those include lack of commitment from upper management. The variance between men and women here was less than 2%. The same was true with work-life balance. Again, only about a 2% variance. Other concerns shared by both men and women were reputation of the organization, risk of seeing their job outsourced, the threat of artificial intelligence, as this could reduce the need for a cyber workforce, and last but not least, lack of standardized cybersecurity terminology. Both genders felt standardized cyber terminology is necessary to effectively communicate within the organization. So, if you're a young female looking to plan your future, why should you consider a career in cybersecurity? Well, here are some reasons. You'll be among the first generation of a field that blends science and technology. As cyber pros, you are considered cutting-edge talent. In cybersecurity, every day is a new adventure. You'll have abundant opportunities to advance and grow your skill set. And last but not least, it's an important field where you can make a real difference.
And we're back. And so I thought for this last part of our segment, we would talk a little bit about some of the things that we've recognized that could be useful for people in the general public to understand and know around women in cybersecurity. And so, have you guys heard of Play Cyber? So, Play Cyber is a kind of a gamification that was created by a group called CatSci. And back in March, they brought 1,000 women together across the globe for a little over 24 hours, a virtual event where they played a variety of cyber games to learn about careers in cybersecurity. It took place during Women's History Month, and the games were called the Wicked Six Cyber Games. And there's a URL you can go to that's www.wicked6.com, and you could participate. It's done annually, and it's an annual event for the Women's Society of Cyber Jiu-Jitsu. And so,
Cyber Jutsu, I believe it is.
oh, Jutsu, Cyber Jutsu, yes, definitely. And so, if you haven't heard of it, it's an exciting piece. It happens every year, and it's something that our listeners should certainly look into and just kind of follow along or participate in. I think it's something that could be beneficial for people thinking about getting into cybersecurity and wanting to know more about it and how to do it and what are the steps that they need to take. So
I think that sounds really cool. That gamification aspect of it's kind of neat.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, it really is about trying to get people excited about, and in this particular
Yeah.
case, women excited about finding fields in cybersecurity that they align with. I mean, you know how often I'll talk to an employee of mine and they'll say, well, this is kind of what I really want to do, but I don't know where it fits. And and then you spend a little bit of time helping them understand what their drivers are. It's like, so I would say, so what drives you every day, right? Because ultimately the career you want to do is something that when you wake up in the morning, you can't wait to go in and do it. I mean, if it's something you're
Yeah.
going to have to do every single day, why do you want to dread doing it? You'd want to be excited about doing it, solving another problem or whatever it might be, right? And so think about it from that perspective. If you're thinking about where do you fit in the world of cybersecurity, consider the thinking about it from the standpoint of what excites you about that topic. Is it about making a difference, learning something? There's always an opportunity to learn something in cybersecurity. Is it about, creating something new that is a new tool that you can offer or help support bringing to the general public? I mean, there's a number of places and roles and experiences you can have in cybersecurity. Take a little bit of time of understanding what drives you and what are those key aspects, and then figure out where those key aspects might fit in a cybersecurity role. And if you don't know what all the cybersecurity roles are, there are resources you can go to online that can help explain these different roles and help you get a better understanding of where some of those drivers that you have might fit into one of those roles.
I think we need to talk a little bit about um, some takeaways here too. But before we do, I'd like to hit on one more thing, Jason. You mentioned the gamification aspect of it and things that we're trying to do to lure more women into this field. One thing I'd highly like to encourage the listeners to do is go out and Google Women Know Cyber, the documentary, because it's a really cool watch. And I think it would really inspire a lot of people that are on the fence about getting into this career field. And it's geared towards drawing more women into the field. And I think so. It's a cool watch. And I think it's going to excite a lot of people that are on the fence and kind of pull them towards it. And so with that, I think the way I'd like to close out tonight's episode is I want to go back to Kristen and Madison and basically ask you both if you were going to offer any advice to the women listening to this episode that are on the fence or that are thinking about joining this field. What are a few takeaways that you would like to leave them with before we close out the episode? Kristen, let's start with you.
Yeah, and I speak to this from the lens of the conversation we've been having around cybersecurity back to, the passion, making a difference, having an impact. But I think my advice just is really generally speaking to women who are looking to build their career and whether it's leadership positions, technology positions, cybersecurity positions. And I think it's really just three things, right? Push the boundaries, stand up for what you believe in, and always know your worth.
Yeah. Awesome. Madison?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say go after it. There's a statistic that 90% or women will go after jobs they feel 90% qualified for. Men will go after jobs they feel 60% qualified for. And so just because, you feel that like, oh, I'm only 60% qualified, there's no way I'm going to get it, go after it and do it. The other thing is I would say be vulnerable and ask prospects for help. Even when I'm on the phone with like Kevin earlier, I'm like, help me understand that. And then constantly enable yourself. So listen to podcasts and then also book recommendations. I would totally prioritize the Phoenix Project. If you came from theater, marketing, and economics like myself, that book will help you understand a overall consensus of how IT works.
That's great. And I love the advice. Before Jason says this, I just love the advice to watch podcasts, especially Cyber Distortion podcast.
Shameless plug.
Not that I'm biased. Go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
So I was going to say what I really like about both of your guys' comments is the fact that when you gave those, they were, look, let's go after what you want. Don't let society tell you you can't achieve something. The first step is to accept the fact that you can achieve it and go after it. And the second part is educate yourself. I mean, there are things you can do that can set you up for success. And make sure you're doing those things, because success doesn't come by just wanting to have it. Success comes by wanting to have it and doing the things that you need to do to get it. Those two things go hand in hand. And you can't expect for something to happen if you're not willing to put the time and attention into it. So I really like both of those aspects of that. I will go back to this where we started at in our first segment of all of this. It is a somewhat depressing on some note that we have made progress and not enough. And I hope that we will continue to educate people on the exciting field of cybersecurity to the point that we will get more people of all types involved in cybersecurity and start to break down some of these unconscious biases that are embedded in our thinking, the things that are holding us back from achieving greatness, and let it go, and let's just go win. Let's use the right people to win at the things that we need to do. I'm hopeful that as a community we're getting there. I'm hopeful that we will get there faster, and I'm happy that there are individuals like you two that are making it happen and are willing to be on a podcast like this to express how to do it and to get more people involved in it. And really, that's what we're trying to do. That's what this podcast is about. And I'm so happy that you guys were able to participate in that and share your thoughts on this topic. And hopefully we will this will be one more step forward for someone who will say, I wasn't thinking about doing cybersecurity, and I heard that 2-part episode on cyber distortion that my grandma told me I should probably listen to, and it changed my world, right? That is everything.
I heard that awesome quote from Kristen Twining that just inspired me, because this was awesome to see two females that are kicking ass in cybersecurity come on and talk about it.
Right.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I think, Jason,
you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. I think one good thing is we're starting to see large organizations like Black Hat and DEF CON and those types of organizations that are really pushing to bring more women into cybersecurity, and that's ultra important. So we're excited. For that, we're gonna wrap this thing up, call it an episode. Again, thank you for being on. To the listeners, we talked early in this season about an episode around the dark web. We had a lot of fun with that. Jason and I had a confession at the end of that episode, if you recall, and neither one of us had been on the dark web using the Tor browser. So I'm excited to say that we're going to kick off season 2, our very first episode, with our findings and research from the dark web. That's going to be ultra cool. I can't wait. So get excited, because that's the way we're going to kick off season 2.
If we make it back.
If we survive the dark web.
Yeah.
If we don't, come looking for us, please.
It was nice knowing you.
Right.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thank you guys
so much.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. If you enjoyed the podcast today, I'm excited to share with you that you can now listen to us on all of these major streaming platforms. Also, if you learned anything from the conversation today, please share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues. The more of this knowledge we can share, the more cybersecure we all become. I'd say like, subscribe, and all of that jazz, but hey, you're not morons. You know that. I will leave you with some words of wisdom, though, from the former director of the FBI, Mr. Robert S. Mueller III. He said there are only 2 types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. You guys be safe, remain diligent, and take care.